It was noontime today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace,
Well, all right. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about UFOs or what is it? UAPs, aliens, the whole thing. We're committed, right? We're all in. My big question is why, right? Why is all this coming out? I mean, I know it's been over the last couple of years, not in the last week or two, but why are we now a little more open when our government has been always like so hush hush?
Yeah.
So you go back like way back, right? 1896, they saw airships over California. That's kind of crazy. I mean, that's you because then it's a big deal, right?
Right. There's not a
you're
whole
like,
lot
"Hey,"
of stuff flying around up there.
right. 1947, Roswell, right? Obviously a big, you think aliens, you think of Roswell. In Phoenix in 97, over 1,000 people saw this like big V-shaped lights up in the sky. The mayor was there and he denied it at first. And then later he's like, oh yeah, no, I saw it. So he's kind of a douchey liar, but you know how it is. 2004, we had the Tic Tac incident, right? Where the Navy had. Now, like, so all that time we'd been like, no, there's nothing here. You guys are just stupid. You all imagined it. Mass hallucination. It was the way the horizon and the lights were glimmering off my car, and who knows? You were all just dumb. And then it all started to turn like around 2017. The New York Times put a big article out and they were like, we keep ignoring it and we're worried about the safety of like pilots and things like that. We keep pretending there's nothing there, but there's shit flying around everywhere. Harvard right around then got on board and created the Galileo project where they actually started, talking to they created a study group to study UAPs. 2020, the Navy released those 3 videos from the fighters. That was a big thing. And then we started having the hearings.
Right.
Now, the hearings didn't really lead to much, and we're going to talk about that. But they said, oh, now we're going to have transparency and accountability. Remember there was so that was let's talk about that for a minute. Transparency and accountability. So all this time, right? We had, what did they have? I think 4 different hearings between 22 and 23 about UAPs. And all of them, they were like, oh, we're going to release stuff. We're going to, no more secrets. We're going to have it come out. Trump was going to expose it. Hillary was like, if you elect me, I'm going to expose it. We're going to get all this stuff. And basically all we got from all those hearings was, well, there are things out there that we don't know. We're not sure what they were. That was the only official acknowledgement from the government. Now, you're going to tell me about that David Grusch guy, but from the government, from an official stance, all we got was, yeah, there's things we don't know what they are. That's kind of shady.
Yeah.
What do you?
Well, do you remember that right before the election, we did a show on all the drones or whatever it was flying over New Jersey and Virginia. And Trump was like, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is when I get elected.
And then he was like, oh, it's just drones.
It's fine. I saw some pictures of some weird stuff, dude. And you're telling me it's drones, then the government has some weird shit. So what is, so what if this is all like a big shell game? You know what I mean? What if this is all like a big, oh yeah, maybe there are aliens. We don't know what it is. And it's just like high-tech new, government weapons.
Yeah.
And they're just, I mean, is it possible that our government would lie to us?
No, Kevin, come on. I mean, that's it. Were they out there looking for something? Yeah, I don't know. So Well, that's one of the things, like, where this whole trust comes into play. So, let's go back to that, well, let's talk about so France, China, Russia, a lot of countries in Africa all have had programs where they're studying UFOs and, unexplained aerial phenomena. They haven't necessarily been like, oh, there's aliens or
Mhm.
whatever, but there's weird shit going on that doesn't make any sense. And they haven't been like playing with people,
Mhm.
and that's I wonder, like, why is our government, hey, let's just mess with you.
Right.
Now, 2023, we had that David Grusch testimony, and he testified. He said crazy things. Like, he said that he called them non-human
Right.
biologics. You would know these as aliens, right? And that we had secret programs to reverse engineer
Mhm.
UFOs and like we were doing things. He came out and was like, "Oh, all this stuff." Now I don't know if you guys remember him. He's the one who came like before Congress and was like, "Yeah, look, I'm going to come clean cuz nobody else is."
Right.
And that's but yeah, he had credibility. He was a former intelligence officer, but and he worked for a lot of different companies throughout, in the Department of Defense and like that, and with NASA and
Right.
all
He's
kinds of stuff.
legitimate high-ranking intelligence
Yes. And he
officer.
had access to this
Right.
information, but it was weird that he's like all on his own. Like everybody else is like, we don't know you,
Mhm.
buddy. And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, they did try and do like a bit of discrediting of him. Like his medical records were his military medical records were leaked. By who? Like,
yeah,
for
that's
what
true.
reason? Why would anyone do that? Like, you're risking your entire career if you do something like that. So why did they do it?
Right. It's weird because the VA, like, they'll just drop your shit anywhere. Oh, we left a laptop with everybody's
Right. Everybody's
information
social
just
security number and name.
I was at the coffee shop, I got distracted, there was a pretty
Mhm.
girl, and I just left my laptop there, and yeah, the password was already entered, and it was just open, or maybe the password was the word
Mhm.
password,
Right.
it was one of
Yeah.
those. I think that when I was in the military, so it's a million years ago, and they were like, 80% of all government passwords are the word
Yeah.
password.
Yeah.
And this was back like 2000,
Yeah. If that
2001,
doesn't work, try
but
admin or administrator and it'll get right
yep.
through.
Right through, because that's the secret code,
Mhm.
there's a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4, we do that.
Yep. Yep.
I don't so, I mean, that's the thing, like, it's weird that I'd have to go back to how much science has been hurt because we choose to ignore this stuff. Like, could we have learned a lot of cool things? Like, now, I one of the ones that comes to mind is like
Right.
Tesla, right? He he talked about uh what did he say? Like he used uh communications that were out of this world
Mhm.
and from extraordinary sources, and I think he didn't want to be perceived as crazy. Well, he was perceived
Yeah.
as crazy,
Yeah. He
but
definitely was.
But
And
I
he
I
was
gotta say,
insane. But
results
yeah.
results talk,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. I mean, he was obviously came up with a lot of stuff that we're still like inventing today that are like kind of still catching up with stuff that he was doing then, you know?
Yeah. Like Roswell was in 47 and supposedly, you watch like all the conspiracy videos and things on UFOs, and they say that a lot of the information from reverse engineering that crash was like leaked out, and that's where like they say that transistors came
Mhm.
from. A lot of different like circuit stuff, pretty much the whole circuit board thing came from the 47 Roswell thing, and like supposedly our government and like DARPA type things. I don't think DARPA was
Mhm.
around then
In
in
that
that
form. Right.
form, but those type of people were leaking the stuff to like Bell Labs and all these things to make America progress is kind of the theory,
Mhm.
right? Is what they they hint at. Now, there have been some crazy things. Like, do you remember that? How do you even say it, Kevin?
Yeah,
Umamu,
I don't.
or
I'm
what
not
was
even
the
gonna
big
try and say the name of that
that big
cigar
stone?
shaped.
I think it. Yeah, that big
Right. So that was an
like rock.
interstellar object,
Little
right? That came from outside of this solar system and left off to in a different direction, after it picked up speed from the sun. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was picking up speed based on gravity alone. Other people said that that was not the case, that there was some other whatever, dude. I don't understand that stuff.
Outside
Yeah.
forces,
I
right,
mean,
that it was changing, like, and they also, like, I read all kinds of things of, as it gets closer to the sun and the warmer air, the gas changes and it changes speed, and, like, there was all kinds of, I guess there was another video, I was looking for that one, and there was one I didn't even remember that was, they showed some, like, big black spot in front of the sun, and then it looked like it was
right.
powering
Sucking
up
up
from the
energy.
sun.
Yeah. That was a
Yeah,
wild
you
video
saw it
clip.
sucking up the
Yeah.
energy, and they were like, "Oh, no, that
That's
just
just normal.
happens. It just
Right.
kind of, like, burps
And
out
I'm not a
stuff,"
physicist. I
and
don't know. That shit looks wild to me, though.
right. That's one of those things you wanna ask those smart guys. Who is it? The I don't know, the guys that are always on Joe
Yeah. Well, I'll
Rogan.
tell you who I asked.
Uh-oh.
Well,
Who'd
last
you
night I
ask?
went and saw Giorgio Tsoukalos. You know who I'm talking about?
Now
He's
he's from the
he's
History Channel. He's
he's
the
the
crazy
crazy
hair
dude
guy.
with the ancient aliens, right? With
Yeah.
the tan and the hair that's like 6 inches sticking straight off his head. Well, he gave a talk
Yeah,
last
tell
night
me.
recently, and or talk last night, and I got to go
Yeah.
over there and listen to his crazy ass, and he was definitely talking about the um all sorts of stuff. Now he was saying that he thinks that the government isn't releasing any of this information intentionally. He thinks that this stuff is like getting out despite the
Okay.
government's
And then they're
efforts.
trying to
Right.
damage control. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
I feel like there's gotta be more that you got out
Well,
of
there's
this,
there
this
are there
evening.
are three
This
guys, there are
crazy.
four guys there, and it was a lot of crazy conspiracy stuff. It was all they do the ancient stuff, so it was all about pyramids and all that stuff. But
Okay.
then they got into at the end they got into a little bit about all the newer stuff that's coming out, and
Nice.
they had a bunch of videos about a bunch of videos of different encounters that were recorded. Then the Navy videos that got out that were, I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't get out; they were released, But
Right.
yeah, there was
Well,
the,
that yeah.
did you ever watch shit,
Uh,
what was that show with oh, never mind. It was crazy. These guys are all out of their fucking minds, and it kind of discredits the whole thing just because they're so
that's
insane. But
that's one of the things. Yeah, like I like this show, the Y
yeah,
Files,
hmm
right? And that guy's got a YouTube channel. He does like deep dives in everything, and he's really pretty cool. And he like inspires me to research all kinds of stuff and go into,
yeah,
crazy town and whatever. But and also if I'm searching out something, he's usually got it. But the whole thing is his show, he has like a little fish bowl with a like fake
yeah,
fish that
uh huh,
talks, and they call it
hmm
hecklefish. And the thing is, he's like, "Yeah, I have that here because otherwise, if I don't act like I'm a little bit
yeah,
crazy, the government's gonna come after me, and I don't want to get shot for exposing stuff." Whereas if you're like, "Oh no, it's
right.
tinfoil hat,
It's
it's
crazy
crazy,"
stuff. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's
then
a
you
lot
don't
of
need to
stuff
worry.
on the Y files that are like stretch credulity, but he seems to be like open about like that fact that it is a little bit crazy. But
Right,
I mean, he's putting
right.
out a lot of videos, man. So there's a lot of fun stuff there. It is one
A
of my
lot of stuff.
favorite YouTube channels.
And yeah, no, I enjoy it. Anyway, so there's a bunch of like reasons why you should be terrified of UFOs. And And one of the things is, so there was an article. Well, there were a couple. So there was an article on the Jerusalem Post that had UFOs once took control of Russian ICBMs. Now, you can look up this article, like I just snatched it up. It's from 2023, August 1st, 2023. But basically, they had a colonel that they're quoting, and he talks about how a ship hovered over a nuclear missile facility, or ICBM facility, and basically activated all the missiles where they started to be brought up, entered the launch codes, everything. They were like freaking out, like, hey, we're not doing this. And then it all just stopped and the ship took off and everything went back to normal. And people kind of took that as the aliens were showing us who's in charge. You know, and that's kind of a creepy idea. In 1967 at Malmstrom Air Force Base, 10, they said ICMs. Now, that's intercontinental missiles, but is that not ballistic? Like, I don't know why the B is not there. Did the guy writing the article not? I don't know. But became disabled at the same time the base was reporting they had like red lights and something hovering
over top of it,
over the base. So they had that going on. You can search that out. That's definitely all over the internet. In 76, an Iranian pilot tried to actually shoot down a UFO and like engaged it. And when he did, everything in his plane, the controls just stopped responding. Like, it didn't shut it down where he crashed or anything, but nothing worked or did anything. And it just maintained, like, basically, once again, it was kind of like they were in control, you know? And so in the past, you're always like, nobody reports stuff because you get reported as like, oh, well, that guy's crazy, or you actually lose your job, right? If you come forward. They even like shut down American Airlines pilots and things just for being like, yeah, I saw one. And I mean, things like that, right? You need to be careful about what you say. Why the fear, Kevin? Do you have any theories of why the government would shut
I
this
think
down?
that they've been pushing this conspiracy theory, crazy bullshit for a long time. And I think it started with a lot of the stuff that was coming out of Area 51. You know, people were going out there and recording things and like trying to sneak in and all sorts of stuff. It became like a big public event, you know what I mean? The secret military base.
Right.
And I think that they were using that area to test aircraft, you know?
I think all
and they were like, UFOs. It was UFOs. And they were spreading that shit secretly. But then, you know, coming up with that phrase, conspiracy theorist, and like, you know, making it out that only crazy people believe in aliens. If you saw an alien while you were flying an aircraft, that means you're insane and you shouldn't be in charge of flying aircrafts anymore. You know, I think they were kind of pushing this as a way to discredit people. And I mean, you can discredit people all you want, but, you know, when everybody's seeing them over the East Coast, you can't just discredit every single person that saw it. You know, when everybody sees them, you know, unless everybody is insane except for the people that are, you know, that are trying to cover things up, then it seems a little weird.
Right. No, I don't know. It's hard because, and kind of the flip side, like you hinted at, well, maybe the government is just kind of getting away from them now, and this is like damage control. But if we look at it from the other side, like they are starting to slowly release it. Like maybe you look at it like it's been too hard. We've been covering it up so long. If we want it to get out now, we have to kind of do it slowly or it gets too weird. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't do a complete 180. Like to me, it's still pretty open compared to how we've been. Things are pretty open, right? Like how did those Navy files get out? I don't even understand the three.
I mean, they released them. So I don't understand why they would, you know?
Right. Unless you were trying to get at something. So, you know, at the time they were like, oh, maybe it was Hunter's laptop. They just needed a
Yeah.
big story, like do something. I don't care. Aliens, whatever. Joe probably was like, just do something. I don't care. And they were like, all right, he said
Mhm.
aliens, let's do it. And they went in and, you know, I mean, that could be. Now, what if aliens have been working with our government or even possibly telling our government what to do behind the scenes? And they're kind of like, all right, it's starting to get away from us. We're going to have to like ease people into this. So there's not, they always say there'd be mass panic. If we knew about aliens, there'd be
Right. But if
mass
there's
panic.
all this stuff that came out and everyone's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Who cares?
Yeah.
Nobody even
TikTok.
nobody
Have you
even
seen
paid
this
attention.
girl jumping
Yeah.
up and down? And yeah, I don't need
Yeah.
aliens,
No.
you know? We got yeah, I don't think there would be the mass panic, unless I mean, what do you think would happen? Like Independence Day or movies like that, if like a big ship or even way back to Close Encounters of the
Right.
Third Kind, you know, that big ship hovered over the
Yeah.
mountain, or Independence Day, something hovered over the
The
Pentagon
day the Earth
or the
stood
White
still.
House, I think it
Yeah.
was. Right, any of those. If a ship showed up and nothing happened and it just stayed there, what would people do? Would
I
they
think there'd
care?
be like a lot of news stories and stuff about it. And then
And then we'd get
yeah,
tired of it.
24
If
hours,
it
dude.
went
It would
on
be
more than 3
different
days,
things. Trump
we'd
said
be like,
something
whatever.
crazy, like, you know, whatever. A million other things happen. And people just move on to the next thing. It's no big deal anymore. I mean, we see shit videos of stuff in the sky all the time. And everyone's like, yeah,
Mhm.
okay. I don't care. Whatever.
Yeah. So it's more and more you think we've kind of just accepted it. And now there was another theory. There's a book that came out um in 2023, so not that long ago. Serge Monast, the guy's a Canadian investigative
Mhm.
journalist. So right there, you kind of
Right.
discredit him a
Yep.
little bit. Like if they didn't lose you at Canadian, they lost you at investigative journalist. You know, it could go either way. Um, but so this guy, he's got a book. You can buy it on Amazon. It's out there, and it's called The Blue Beam Project. All
Mhm.
right. And he postures four different like stages of how things will play out as far as like
Mhm.
aliens. All
Right.
right. And his theory is that it's kind of like a CIA cover story kind of thing. Like they, you know, it's not even really aliens. So work with me here. So basically, a new age religion, this is what his book postures, is the very foundation of the new world government, without which the dictatorships of the new world is completely impossible. So what's going to happen is Project Blue Beam Project is what he calls it. And it has 4 steps. So I don't want to get them wrong. So I'm going to read them. I know it's a little crazy, but they're pretty crazy. So they'll keep you guessing. A reevaluation of archaeological knowledge. Basically, he suggests that things like HARP and things like that would cause
Mhm.
earthquakes. And then artifacts are just going to pop up.
Okay.
And like, oh, look, it turns out we were wrong about religion the whole
Mhm.
time. Right? So that way they can kind of shape it into whatever they want it to be. So that's phase 1. Phase 2, a great space show with 3-dimensional optical holograms. And this could be either like a big projection of God in the sky or some kind of thing that we believe like aliens,
Mhm.
kind of like whatever. And they were talking about craziness. Like he goes deep into it, could be like Christian people will see Jesus and Muslims will see Muhammad,
Right.
and you know everybody sees what they want to see, right? And then kind of like merge them all into one. Then two-way phase 3, two-way electronic telepathic communication. So this is like why we needed all the 5G antennas
Mhm.
set up around, because that's the one that like the frequency is pretty close to your brain waves and they can direct beam thoughts right into your head. So it'd be like you're hearing from God directly.
I like
Kevin.
it.
This is where your tinfoil hat,
it actually comes
might
into effect.
actually
Yeah,
be a good
might be
idea.
time.
Yeah, where you're like, I should have been wearing the foil hat, and then I wouldn't hear this crazy stuff. All right, and then 4, supernatural manifestations by electronic means, tricking mankind to believe that a UFO invasion is coming, spreading high frequency waves over the earth in abundance, putting integrated chips on every individual. And that's how they bring kind of the new world order, right? That's how it all happens. So that's, hey, that's an
the
option.
best
Now,
theory I've heard so far.
all right. So the Y-Files kind of thing, the guy dug into that one and he talked about it. And his theory at the end was like, well, there also was like a Star Trek episode that was like exactly that same plot that came out before this guy's book. So, but hey, just because it's out there, does that mean it's not true?
It's in the zeitgeist now, man. It's out there.
Exactly. Once it's there, just because you think they're after you or out to get you, Kevin, it doesn't mean they're not. They're always watching. Now, I don't know. I mean, what's your take on that? I have one more theory
let's talk about
but
investigating, like maybe they're getting involved with this. The government is, because this means that there's actual potential threats. Like there's an actual danger to aircraft, to, people. We had talked about the nuclear weapons, but I mean, there's been a lot of, speculation and talk about them showing up around nuclear power plants and missile silos and things like that, deactivating missiles and things like that. But I mean, it seems to me that if that was actually the case and these things were actually happening, you'd want to look into it, right? If you don't know why it's happening.
Are you really protecting us if you don't dig to the bottom?
You know what I'm saying? Are you really doing anything? But I mean, also at the same time, like Edward Snowden came out and warned us that the government was spying on us, and they're like, no, prison, get him, kill him. And Julian Assange came out, and he was in prison for 5 years, like maybe, it's better to just everybody shuts the fuck up and just listen to your government. Otherwise, you're going to be in prison, and, don't look into any of this stuff any further, stay in your lane.
And that's the thing, is like eventually it gets out of your control, right? Like what if it gets too far away from you?
And I've heard 10, 20 different people that have come out and said like wild stuff. Like this is, this is coming out because this is like gonna come out whether the government lets it out or not. Like, and I heard it, by 2023, February 2023, all this information is going to come out. And then it was 2024. And now it's 2025. All this information is going to come out. But they keep saying this. It's the same people that just keep saying it that are keep being wrong. So, I don't know.
It's kind of like the 80s and 90s. There were always all the prophets, kind of the Christian guys who were like,
the end of the world is coming.
This is going to happen. Hagen, and there were a bunch of guys that back in the day that were like, yeah, it's going to happen. And
the rapture.
Here are the clues, the Antichrist, and I already know. I have insider knowledge.
Yeah, and there's been several times where they came up with like hard dates and like time of day, and then they came and went, and they came up with another date, like, dude, if you're wrong once, that's it, man. God doesn't use prophets that are wrong. If you believe in that
kind of
stuff,
the Bible, they don't get it wrong. So
if you get it wrong once,
who knows?
And and I think you're 100% right. Follow the money. That's what all of that stuff is about.
Yeah, well, I like money. I mean, if I could give you some insight, that would. But I can't sell it, right? If I don't believe something, or at least question or ponder, like here, I tell you where I'm at, right? But I can't sell it with a straight face. Like, that's why I'm just like the bad salesman guy. Cause I'm like, I don't know. I mean, if you got money, this is cool. But you know, maybe you should just spend your money on getting out in the woods and having a
Right.
good time. You know, I don't know. But and yet I still buy things. So I don't know what's right. Well, what's your take before I go down this next road? What's your take on aliens? What do you think they are? Do you think there's, or I guess there's UFOs and
Right.
aliens?
Right. So obviously,
So we all know they're
yeah,
seeing things, right? There's lights and ships in the
obviously there are
sky. What
UFOs
do
or
you think?
UAPs. There's unidentified things in the air that I don't
Yes.
know that anybody really knows exactly what they are. Aliens, I mean, there's millions of stars and in billions of galaxies.
Mhm.
Is there, intelligent life somewhere? Yeah, probably. Is it here though? That's the big question, I don't know. But I'm not gonna, if I ever get abducted, I'll let everybody know. But a lot of people have been abducted and told everybody, and we're all like, they're crazy people, And are they? Probably. They probably are crazy. There's probably a lot of crazy people out there that say and see a lot of crazy things. But it's hard to
Well,
differentiate
that
them.
actually goes right to my next theory. Now, I'll dig into what I believe here in a minute, but what you're saying actually fits my next theory is so in the Bible they have the rapture, right? You know
Mhm.
about that? Where they basically Jesus comes back for the saints, I guess is how you'd posture it. In the Bible, in Thessalonians, it says, "For the Lord Himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words." Now, the idea is, what if the alien stuff they're trying to set up for if that happened and you had all the Christians
Right.
disappear, government's got to be like,
Aliens?
you don't want to, you got to deal with, you got to get
Yeah,
ahead of it.
I feel like though, and that this is like a legitimate theory that, is just as believable as everything else we've been talking about.
Exactly. That's the thing is, and even if, right? Because I know some people get offended when you bring up religion and Christianity and this and that. But even if that's not really going to happen, there are people in power that believe it's going
Right.
to happen and that they have to get ahead
Mhm.
of it,
Well,
right? They're not Christians, a lot of the people that are in power, but they feel like they need to have a cover story in case that happens because they kind of go the other way
right.
on that. Like there's good and there's bad. And so obviously people in government would be on
But
the
yeah,
bad
but if
side.
they're not Christians, why would they think the rapture is going to happen?
No, they believe the Bible. They just don't
Oh,
follow
like devil worshippers
Jesus.
is what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Devil. Yeah. Now you're getting it.
Satanists.
Because, right, when you think of politicians, do you not
I
think
mean,
devil
if
worshipers?
anyone's made a deal with the devil, like
Well,
look at Congress. That's
yeah.
where they are. Look at the Senate.
In the Bible, do they not call Satan the father of
Mhm.
lies?
Right.
When you think of a politician,
There you go, man.
are you thinking that sounds like
Yeah.
his
Now,
children
one of
right there,
the
right?
since you bring this up, one of the other things that I've heard in like the message boards in the deep holes of the internet is that
Yep.
a lot of the people that are covering up these alien encounters are
Yeah.
hyper religious, like super
Oh,
religious Mormons and super
yes, I have
religious
heard that. Yep.
Pentecostal Christians, evangelicals, and they are fully convinced that these aliens that are, contacting everybody are actually demons trying to like trick. So
Yeah.
you don't want to
Yeah.
interact with them. You know what I mean? Like
No,
you
you
interacting
don't.
with them in any way is like, is
Well,
unchristian, and
Hollywood
you got to keep protect people from
Hollywood
them.
always yeah. Hollywood always had the movies where you were getting like beamed
Mhm.
up and the aliens were just, sucking you up through the thing. I seem to remember the Marvin the Martian kind of
Mhm.
thing, and they had a spaceship and it just sucked up
Yep.
Bugs Bunny
Sucking
or
up
whatever.
cows,
May
all sorts of stuff.
maybe I tried to find the picture and I couldn't find it. So it could be one of those, what do they call it? Where you remember something that didn't really happen, but that's, the something effect, the guy, Nelson Mandela effect there, right? Where, so I don't know, but I think of like Independence Day. I mean, that was like a laser beam that kind
shot
of
down. They
shot
weren't
down
sucking
into
anybody
people.
up, but
They weren't
I
sucking
mean,
anybody up. But Hollywood kind of that image
right.
in
There
your
was that
mind
movie
of
Fire in the
beams.
Sky where he got sucked up in the beam.
Yeah.
And that was based on a true story, according to the guy that was sucked up. So
Now, like we could even go like one further. Now, this is going to full on crazy town, and hey, I'm there, right? I'm in crazy town. So the Bible described there was actually in Ezekiel, they talked about the cherubim, the angels would like rise up and they moved, throughout, and they had they flew through the sky basically, and they had wings and rose from the ground with wheels that didn't leave their side, like a flying chariot, I guess is how people interpret it. And there's some crazy stuff out there. Now, another thought, this is, work with me now. So if somebody was to say that they were demons and angels, because right, God created the universe, right? The heavens and the earth. I think the Hebrew word was like universe is the same for that. And so God creates all this. So who's to say that these beings aren't the angels and demons and the angels that were cast out, right? I think that's where they're going with this. Now, remember early on in Genesis, they talked about the Nephilim and how they came into the daughters of man, right? You've heard that kind of story. And so they talk about that kind of thing. And when we hear UFO stories, remember, people are always like, yeah, I think they took my semen and I think they, they impregnate people. Is it not the same thing?
yeah. Well, I mean,
You see,
it's all
you see
through
where
Greek
I'm going.
history, right? Perseus and Hercules, they're all like kids
Yeah.
of gods that were just like blowing the backs out of chicks in ancient Athens. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what's going on, but there's definitely a lot of stories. It's not like, history is riddled with that sort of stuff of chicks getting banged by gods and having like demigod babies, But to me, that's always just like weirdos that are like super into like pervy stuff and just their minds get out of control and I'm gonna write this down. I gotta get this out. It's been happening. Yeah, it's been happening, for millennia. But
I think, like, because a lot of the theories now seem to go with, they always say, oh, well, they defy the laws of physics and they whatever. And a lot of the people kind of posture that they are interdimensional, right? Or that they're on another plane. And I think that's where you're starting to get a lot more of the angel demon kind of thing coming in, because they're just like in a different plane or, and I'm
one of the
just
theories is
postulating
that when a nuclear explosion happens, it interacts with those alternate dimensions. And that's why that's why they're trying to shut them down and keep them from going off and keeping tests from happening, because it's causing damage in the alternate dimensions. Now, I'm too stupid to really understand the whole, 5-10 dimensions or whatever their, string theory is saying there is. But what if string theory is just a bunch of bullshit? Because they haven't come up with any answers. They're the most brilliant people that have come out of any university in the last 20 years have been focusing on this string theory. And what if it just doesn't lead to anything? Like, what did you come up with so far? Like, have you figured anything out? Because it just seems like a lot of math for no reason.
Kevin, math
What's the solution?
fun.
What's the answer?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. it's all kind of crazy out there, and that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I think it's as likely not, to use the words of the VA. It's as likely not that it's demons and angels as it is extraterrestrial
Right.
beings.
Well, I mean, you've got, you know, alternate dimensional aliens, right? Like coming over. You've got, maybe it's aliens from a different star that just like came over here, you know, like what, there's a million possibilities of what this could be. And we've never
There
even
is.
seen one of these things.
Well,
You know
and
what I mean? One of the
that's I
beings is
think
what
what
I'm
it
saying.
right, right. And that's kind of what it comes down to is, so there are all these possibilities, but science completely is like, nope, nope, there's nothing here. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not looking at it. It's all fantasy. That's not real. Those people are crazy. So we haven't even considered these ideas from a scientific or logical perspective. And even if people who are intelligent and, you know, smarter than you and me are having ideas about this, they're afraid to come forward and say
Right.
something because they'll just
Right.
be
And
labeled
I
as
keep
crazy, you know?
seeing physicists saying that, you know, these guys are saying they defy physics, but what physics? What are
You
we
must
talking
not
about?
understand
Like,
physics then.
let us
Yeah,
see what you've
exactly.
got, and then the physicists will decide if it's, you know, but they don't have any physicists on it, or at least that we know of. You know, we don't know what the government's doing. And I guess, you know, like we just pay for it, you know, and just you do whatever you want with our money, I guess.
Yeah. No, exactly. But I don't know. I think we got a lot here to
Yeah. Well, I
digest,
know
Kevin. That's what
one
I
of
get.
these.
Like I'm always afraid to do the alien one, but I feel like we dove a little
Yeah,
deeper today.
yeah. Well, one of the things that I you had mentioned you had kind of gone over as like earthquakes, causing earthquakes and finding like stuff, you know. But
Yeah.
people have said that some of these crafts that they have, if they have them, came from like archaeological digs. Like they've been there for
Yes.
thousands of years and they
Yes.
just dug them up.
Well, and there's the new stuff of everything coming. They're just living in the
Right.
ocean.
Right. That's a big one now.
I mean, there's a lot of things going on here that, you know, it's possible.
Transmedium.
But I like that we think everything just comes
Right.
from us. Like, if it didn't come from Earth, it doesn't really
Right.
count. You know, like there might be aliens, but it's really more likely that it's just right here because it's really
Right. Well,
about
it's, yeah,
us.
I think it's, you know, there's a possibility that they've just been in the oceans forever. You know,
Yes.
they're not coming from anywhere else at all. They've just been here and they're just another thing that we don't know about.
No, but definitely something to ponder. So that's what I got today. Kevin, I like it. So with that, you guys have questions, concerns, thoughts, things you want to hear about, email us at
Mhm.
preppingbadass@gmail.com. Otherwise, I'd say stay safe and we will talk to you guys next week.